Hello and welcome to episode 5 of Notts to Talk About, a Notts County podcast dedicated to talking about all things Notts County. Of course, as you always, I'm joined by KC. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. What about yourself?
Yeah, mate, I'm good, and I think we'll get the disappointment out of the way early on. Obviously, last week we previewed the game, and I think you said that we'll either be here feeling very happy or feeling very disappointed, and unfortunately, it is the latter. Of course, Notts losing 1-0 to Mansfield at the weekend. What are your reactions to that game, first off the bat? What are your initial takeaways from that defeat?
Well, I mean, let's be honest. We rarely ever go there and win. I mean, 2005, I think the last time was. So to go there and expect any different was probably a bit naive. But I don't know. I had a good feeling about it. And let's be honest, we should have scored in the first 3 minutes. I mean, Didsey has to score. I know there's players on the line, but you put your foot through that, they're going in the back of the net with the ball. At that point, you're 1-0 up and it's a different game, and you don't take that chance in 8 minutes. On the 8th minute, sorry. Obviously, they go 1-0 up. So at that point, you're already chasing the game, and then you kind of know from that point their fans are going to be on there up for it, and they're going to be behind their team, and it was always going to be that little bit more difficult as soon as they went 1-0 up. So, but what I will say is defensively, we continue to look better. Obviously, Maynard, his first two games been against Barrow and Mansfield. I mean, two difficult teams to play against. I mean, let's talk about it in terms of at Grimsby, we conceded 5, and then he's come in against two of the league's best teams and conceded twice. I mean, that looks a million miles away at the start of the year. So you got to take some building blocks off of that, I guess, mate. What about yourself? What did you think?
Yeah, I'm glad you've raised that point actually because I wanted to bring that up, and I've seen a lot of comments online about us being more balanced, and I think it's very early days to judge anything. It's 2 games, and I think what's also important to really reiterate is the two teams we've played are the two teams that not only are they in the top three, two of the best teams in the league, but they're also the two teams that have conceded the fewest goals in the league by quite a distance as well. So the fact that we look a little bit less potent attacking, I don't think it's really fair to say because we've played two teams that we didn't really put a dent in them under Luke Williams either. So that's not me comparing and saying, oh, the new management team are way better. That's just me saying, let's give it time before we draw any conclusions or make any judgments. You couldn't have picked the harder 2 games in terms of attacking for us. But like you said, the positives to take away are how much better we look defensively. Obviously, last time we played Mansfield, unfortunately, not to bring it up again, but they did put 4 past us. This time they've only scored 1, and look, it was an unbelievable finish as well. There's nothing Stone could do about that. Maximum I wanted to bring up as well. Saw a lot of reaction online about Stone. For me, he's been a lot better, lot better in the last few games. What is your take on him? Obviously, I know there's been criticism online again, but for me, he's been a lot improved.
Thing is, like when you lose a game like that, people naturally are going to be angry. No matter what you say online, people are going to give you some form of comment back. So that's sort of what you've got to expect. But I agree with you. Look, I think obviously Stone couldn't really do anything about the goal. I mean, it was a very good finish. Um, but ultimately, I don't really understand the criticism. I thought he had a very I wouldn't say a very good game. I thought he was decent enough. Made some very important saves. Let's put it that way. I mean, without some of his saves, it could have been a different story. That's what I said about like the likes of Aidan Baldwin as well. I mean, without Aidan Baldwin, we would have conceded a lot more. But some people didn't agree with me. So look, you can't please everyone, I guess. But at the end of the day, we're talking about Aidan Stone here, and I think genuinely he didn't have a half as bad a game as what some people made out, in my honest opinion.
I'm glad you mentioned Baldwin as well. And I was just listening to, before we started recording, I was listening to last week's episode and we praised Aidan Baldwin then. And I don't want it to be a Aidan Baldwin loving show every week, but for me, he was really good again. I think these two performances have been two of his best performances of the season. How pleasing is it to see him raise his game in that back three. And also, I want to bring in Jaden Warner, made his debut. What a game to make your debut in. How impressed were you with him as well?
Beginning with Vaden, I mean, he's always a 1 foot away from a mistake, and I think that's why everyone knows about him now. That's the same with every player, to be fair, but Aiden's made the most. But end of the day, he is at the minute comfortably our best centre half. There's no doubt about that. I think everything that he's done in the past few games has been, it's almost been like a little teaser for the kind of players he's going to be for the rest of the season. Because if he's going to carry on playing like that, we're going to be okay, in my opinion. I think he's up there in terms of some of the best in the division. Obviously, the best in the division probably don't make as many mistakes as he has, but end of the day, teams in this division don't play the same way we do. Like, he's not. Some teams in this division don't require the centre halves to carry the ball out for 30, 35 yards. So, got to look at it that way. For me, he was very important on Saturday. I thought the game would have been a lot more without him. I just thought his defensive recovery, some of the blocks, some of the little nicks that he got that took it away from the strikers was brilliant. And the same with Warner, to be fair. Like, I thought the first for the goal, obviously he let, I can't remember what player it was. It might have been Will Swan get down his side. So I think that was, but that was in like the first few minutes of the game. You're obviously gonna have that bit of like lack of match sharpness and a bit of rustiness, but ultimately, thought he had a good debut. A lot of promising signs. Obviously came into the derby straight away, so fair play to him for that. Big game, big atmosphere, big attendance, big expectations, and I think he lived up to him.
You don't want to talk about the derby defeat all episode, but another talking point that was raised was the wing backs, and obviously the decision to, if you like, call it invert them or swap them over, whatever you want to call it. I can understand the decision. Obviously, I think it gives them a more natural dribbling angle. Saw that especially with Jody start the second half, he was getting a lot of joy. And I think that, for me personally, a lot of the comments online saying it didn't work, and I understand those comments, but I think if you look at the game as a whole, there were times where it did work. Obviously, that chance you mentioned early on that Diddy probably should score, that was created from Aaron going down the left. And the start of the second half, for sure, Jody was getting lots and lots of joy down that side, but kept getting fouled. He kept getting brought down before he could really get going. What were your thoughts on the wing-back swapping over? Do you think they should have been swapped back over earlier than they were? Because I think it was around the hour mark they got swapped back over. What did you think about it?
I thought they should have been swapped back round at the start of the second half. The first few minutes, obviously, to be fair, the chance, Disney's chance, it came from the Mane going around his man, but then he went round his man once, and I can't remember a time he did it again, and that was the most disappointing thing for me. Because with Nemane, for me, he's obviously contributing with goals now, but like, for me, I can never understand why a man of his quality on the ball, in terms of his dribbling around players and his pace, I just don't understand why he don't do it more often. Like, if he's asked to play a certain way, fair enough. But there's some times in games where you just think, just go around him, and he just doesn't do it. It was a common theme on Saturday, to be honest. Like, sometimes I'm just thinking, like, Aaron, like, just go around him and we'd be a lot better off. But he just never seems to do it, and it's not a criticism of his, because I do think, as of late, he has been a very good goal scoring threat. You have to say. I mean, he had 5 goals in 5 games at one point, but if we're this is obviously a podcast where we speak about truths, and the truth is, he has to start going around his man more, because there's not many defenders in this league that will live up to that pace. There's not like he's almost kind of like he's shooting the defender, because the defender does not want Nemane running at them. So I just think personally he has to do more, and I think I understand why they obviously changed it around. You have to sort of go into a different game plan, different strategy, because if we set up the same way every time, it'd be so easy to play against us. But I know some people thought it worked. I just don't really think it did. Like, Jody was obviously getting fouled, and it was very bad as well. Referee really didn't get a hold of that situation. It took him so long to get the cards out. But for me, I think it more just shows that we need a better, instead of doing a different dynamic on the pitch, I just think we need more options in them sort of areas. But I don't know what you think about it, brother, so I'll ask you, what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, that actually brings perfectly on to the final point I wanted to raise about this game, which was the bench. And talking about options, and we only made one substitution on the day, I believe. Sam Austin came on just under 10 minutes remaining. Did see a little change in shape, which I thought was nice. We went to a back four, sort of chasing the game. Didn't quite work out for us. But in terms of options off the bench, and that will then lead on nicely to what we want to talk about next, which is transfers. I know a lot of people were excited during the week. What did you think to the bench? Obviously, neither of the two signings that were made late in the deadline were on the bench. Hopefully, they will be moving forwards. What did you make of the bench? Do you think more subs could have been brought on? People have said they can't have been any subs brought on, but we did have Toby on the bench. We did have Will Randall on the bench. What do you think to the options and the bench as a whole?
I just think we've got a clear lack. I feel like that's why it took so long to make any change. And realistically, the only one he could have made was the one he did, bringing Austin on. That was the only sort of attacking threat we had. And I feel like that's what people have been complaining about, and it's right. I mean, I said it before. When James Sanderson was being used, he's got a very good future ahead of him, and he's got a lot of potential. But realistically, Luke Williams would have never have used him as much if he had a better option, and that's the truth. So it's clear that we have a lack of options. Obviously, when Colquitt and Jatta obviously come in, and they'll obviously be much better options off the bench. But we obviously Colquitt probably will be Friday. We don't know about Jatta. We'll get on to that, I'm sure. But I just think what Maynard had for his options off the bench, the only one that really made sense was Sam, maybe Jim, but he never came on. But then again, you don't want to change too much of the dynamic, because if you take one of the centre midfielders out and you bring one in and it don't really work, you kind of lose the balance. And I thought we had good control, good balance. So it's not just been a problem for Maynard though. It's been a problem all season really. Injuries hasn't helped that. It's not an excuse. We had plenty of time to make the signings in January. We did. Obviously now we're waiting for him to go on the bench. Obviously the bench will strengthen, but for now, the one sub didn't surprise me, because we are very short of bodies on the bench to come on and make that impact.
Let's talk about those signings then. First, Charlie Colquitt. What do you make of that signing? Obviously on loan from Crewe. I believe he's out of contract in the summer, so it could be one that we look to explore on a permanent. Another left foot midfielder. What was your reaction to seeing him arrive?
Look, obviously, a loan from Crewe is never the most glamorous. I think that's why a lot of people had eyebrows about it, because it kind of looked a bit like maybe not so missed out on a few options and just went for what they could. I don't know if that was the case. I feel like from what you can see of him in clips and what you know about him, there's a lot of potential. It's another case of a player who's had a lot of injuries, and he's obviously not really lived up to his potential, but there's still chance. And I mean, there's one man in the squad now that's proving that, and that's Jody. I mean, endless days out through 3 ACL injuries, I think it is, and now he's flourishing, and obviously they know each other, so hopefully that will obviously come into something really good for us. But I think the signing overall, I mean, he can play as far as I'm aware, he can play the 8 and the 10, so that's good flexibility, good versatility, I guess. But ultimately, I don't think it was a panic buy. I think it was one that the owners probably would have looked at as someone they would have liked to bring in on permanent if they could have now. Obviously, it made no sense, because if you bring him on loan and then he's out of contract, Crewe don't want him, you can take him on a free anyway. But for me, I just hope we get to see the full potential of him. I hope he comes in and he really enjoys his time here, because we have been a good home for these kind of players. I mean, Crowley's pretty similar in the same boat as someone who had a lot of potential and he's starting to really flourish in a lot sure. See Jody as well. So there's definitely a lot of potential about this signing. What do you think about it, brother?
Well, when he signed, I obviously did a bit of research, and I listened to a Chelsea podcast actually from a long time ago. Just searched his name on Spotify, and it came up, and they were tracking his loan when he was, I think it was in Bristol Rovers. So he was very highly rated and thought of at Chelsea. He then went on loan to Swindon, where he played under Luke Williams, and he's also played for Otterson's under Ian Birchall. Obviously, two managers that have manage this football club, and that's why I think that perhaps it's been a signing that, or a player rather, that we've been tracking for some time, rather than a panic. I can understand why it looks like that on the face of it, but I think considering the teams and the stars of the teams he's played in, I think he's certainly a player we would have had on our radar, and he's become available, and we've sort of acted quite quickly and got him in. I want to get in a bit of a rogue shout early on for this signing. I want to get your opinion on it. That's the third left-footed central midfielder that we've got. Now, assuming that he's out of I think he is out of contract at the end of the season, but either way, I assume Crewe would probably let him go, given the fact they've loaned him out. If we look to sign on a permanent, of course, it's all speculation. He's not even kicked a ball for Notts County yet, so this is all speculation. But if we were to sign him on a permanent, where does that leave John Bostock? Because obviously he's out of contract as well. We've not seen an extension yet. This is something that has been spoken about. We've been sort of wondering about the extension since last summer, when we knew he only had a year left on his deal. And some fans have started to be a little bit critical of Bostock's performances. Where do you think it leaves him? Obviously, he's a cult hero, I'd say, because of his actions in the playoffs and things like that. Where do you think it leaves him? Because it would mean three left-footed central midfielders. Of course, you can have three left-footed central midfielders. I'm not saying that we wouldn't. But when you're building the squad, is that too many? And where do you think it leaves him in terms of a contract situation?
Look, I'll always say if something ain't good enough, then someone ain't good enough. But look, you know what I'm like with this guy. What that guy did for me when I needed it sort of most at the time was something I'll never, ever, ever forget or be any less grateful for than I am now. So, look, at the odd chance you might be watching this podcast, John, please don't leave. Please sign a new deal, because I can't do that today. Honestly, I can't. But look, obviously the new deal, if he gets one, which I honestly do think he will get offered one, whether he signs it or not, who knows? Because at the end of the day, he might have ambitions to go and play higher up again, but I hope he hasn't, because I do genuinely want him to stay. I think he's been one of the players that has came to the club and really changed the dynamic of it. I feel like all his beliefs and what he believes in, I think it's had a really positive impact on the dressing room. It's definitely helped the players like Marais and Crowley to settle in and feel a part of it. I feel like everyone's sort of brought into it, and I spoke to Josh about this as well. You know Josh, he's the one that obviously I do spaces with, and he's very, very top guy, by the way. So I hope he watches this and he understands that. I appreciate him. But we were talking about it on Saturday, and he thinks that he hasn't been offered anything yet. So that's hopefully, I hope that is the case. I hope he hasn't been offered something. He's just stalling on it. But yeah, I mean, three left-footed midfielders. But what I have started to notice is one sort of plays more advanced than the other. So they both look kind of comfortable playing as two left-footed midfielders together. Normally it's Robertson playing ahead, and I thought, obviously, by the way, for the record, I thought Robertson had a very promising performance at the weekend, so fair play to him. But yeah, three. I mean, there's clearly an idea in place, because they won't have three left-footed midfielders for the sake of it. So it's going to be one of them cases where you're just going to have to trust what they believe in, I guess. But I don't think it's too much of a problem. I think Colkett, if he starts, he will definitely be the more prominent, the more attacking of the two midfielders anyway. So he will naturally play more advanced. So it shouldn't be too much of a problem, mate. I don't think.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned Robertson, actually, because I forgot to bring his performance up. But again, he's another one that I've seen he's had his critics online. I think it's extremely early to judge him. And to be honest with you, I thought he was one of our best players at the weekend. I'm really, really encouraged by what we're seeing with Scott Robertson. But the deadline day signing then, the one that everyone was excited about, Alassane Jatta. What could we say about this? Obviously, it came out of nowhere for those that aren't aware of the situation. A prominent Danish reporter, and I have to apologise, I haven't got his name on top of my head, but a prominent Danish reporter reported the news a couple of days before the deadline, and it kind of felt a bit like, what is this? But as more and more research was done, it was found that he's an extremely credible journalist, followed by Fabrizio. So he was, it was a very credible link, and obviously it turned out to be true. What are your reactions to that? I mean, that feels like a Notts County signing all over, doesn't it?
I love it. Honestly, I love it. From the minute I found out I think it was actually I was watching one of the Premier League games and I just checked Twitter. I think it was you that I saw that tweet about it. And I was like, what is this? Like as soon as I saw it, I was like, wow, we need to get this done. Look, obviously, Gambian forward, who is really he naturally has been unheard of. People look at him, they think, oh, maybe he could be a bit of a comedy signing. No, I don't think he will be. I think there's obviously look, 1 goal in 13 games. I think it was this season. It's not the best viewing for a striker, but ultimately he's been brought in for a different dynamic, a different option. He's big, but he can move. Like he's not just going to stand there and wait for the ball. He's gonna really he has got a bit of pace about him from what I've seen, and I will say it, I will admit it. What I've seen of him, this came from you, so fair play to you, bro. You are obviously putting your hours to search for him, but look, I'm excited because I get why people say he could be a comedy player because obviously, look, Eli Sam started off that way, but then towards the end, Eli was probably one of our most important players. So I'm very excited to see what he can do for us because I don't think he's going to be any pushover. I think from what I've seen of clips of him, very strong, very direct, has an eye for goal. So I don't think he'll start. Obviously, I think Macca's got that locked down. But, I mean, 25 minutes towards the end of a game, if you need someone big to come and bully a tired defence, you've definitely got that man now. And I'll throw that question right back to you because I want to get your thoughts on the signing.
Yeah, mate, as you said, I've watched quite a bit of him. I'm not going to sit here and say I've watched every minute he's ever played, but I watched a few full games that he played. And, like in terms of being an impact sub, that's what he's been for Viborg this season. That's why his record probably doesn't look as good as it possibly could be. I think he's had injury issues. Another one who's had a few injury problems, and we're looking to bring him in and get into full fitness and get playing. Like you've summed him up perfectly. He's 6'4", but he can really move. His only goal this season came against Copenhagen, and that was a counter attack ball sort of in behind, and he just had the pace and the strength to bully the defender, dominated him, and then when he got one-on-one, he had great composure, and that's another attribute of his. He's got great composure. He scored the winning penalty to send Viborg into Europe a couple of seasons ago as well. So the guy he's got pedigree. He's perfect age. I think he's 25. He's come from not our sister club, but obviously the Reachers have got equity in that club. I don't know how big their stake is, but that would have certainly helped the deal. And I want to put on record that he's motivated as well. I can't say we mentioned our statement, and there have been other offers as well for him from a variety of different countries, and he chose Notts County. He could have gone elsewhere, but he wants to play in England. He wants to, and I think already he's got that cult hero status. Of course he has, because he's a 6'4" Gambian striker. And I think the perfect one you compare him to is Eli Salmon. We're probably going to come on to some of those types of players in a minute, but from what I've seen, I'm really encouraged. He's going to give us a different dynamic up top, but also he's not a big lad that can't play. He's got great feet, both feet. He can link up the play, and that, definitely initially we're not. And also about a lot of questions. When is he coming? We don't know. Neither of us know. I don't think we have no idea when he's going to arrive. But when he does, I think he's going to make an instant impact. Whether he starts straight away or not, I think that's a different matter. But I think he'll get the minutes this season. And I think he can start alongside Macca as well as he gets more and more comfortable. I don't think that's something you can rule out. So yeah, I'm really excited about his arrival. And I think he's got the potential to be a lot of people's favourite player. And that brings us nicely onto a question we asked on Twitter. And like you say, you can follow us on there, not with 2 talk about, with the number 2 in the title. And we asked who is everyone's favourite player. So, like we say every week, we're not being unprofessional by going on our phones, but we're just going to be checking some of the responses there. I'm going to start by throwing Alassane Jatta in there. I think he's going to become a lot of people's favourite player, but also someone you mentioned was Eli Salmon. I have to say that he was another one that I really enjoyed while he was at the club. Have you got any that you want to read out, or any players you want to bring up?
Yeah, look, there's one player that's been looks quite common between the comments. That's obviously Ruben. Look, for me, the most technical player I've seen at Meadow Lane since, well, in my time. I don't know. You might agree because I mean, just for what he could do on the ball, and I think there's 3 or 4 comments that have his name in there, and it don't surprise me. Some of the stuff that he can do on the ball is amazing. He was 3 years of joy with Ruben, really. 3 years of having that big game player. I actually did think sometimes on Saturday, if we had a player like Ruben, we probably could have done a lot more in the game. I wouldn't say win. We definitely would have left with someone who could break the line, such as in the quality you can. And I just think it's absolutely no surprise to see that there's 3 or 4 comments that have his name in there because he made his own legacy at Notts, and he left. I mean, not how many players can say they've left Notts by scoring in a winning penalty shootout. Well, not only that, scoring the equaliser to take it to the penalty shootout and then get it promoted at Wembley in your final game. Not many. So, yeah, Ruben for sure, man. I'm not surprised that there's so many comments with his name in.
No, me neither. And I think his quality's off the ball as well. I mean, that's what we miss a lot of. On the ball, of course, unbelievable player. But also, I think that that's why you can't really compare him to a lot of the players we've had or brought in to replace because his quality's off the ball, his pressing. He's so strong as well. Like, he's a technical player, but he was not pushed off the ball easily. And that strength actually helped him in those sort of games. You know, the playoff final where went down there. Playoff final where he didn't give up, didn't give in. He stuck with it, and he got that goal. And, those playoffs games probably weren't his best performances in a not shirt, but he had a massive impact on those games because of the type of player he is. So no surprise that he's in there. I've seen a couple of other comments. Lee Hughes is in there, definitely one that was one of the first players that one of the early games I remember he scored a hat-trick, and that was, incredible. What a goal scorer. I'm surprised there's not many Maka comments in there. I think the amount of goals that Maka scores, we've got a few Les Brad shouts in there as well. I've seen John Stead there as another comment. One I want to bring up, this is going to be completely rogue. I don't know why, I've always had a soft spot for him. But Richard Brindley, I've always had a soft spot for. I think it's just because he plays football the way I would want to play if I was a footballer. Like, if in terms of on the ball, with the way he's a centre back, he's like just a bit graceful. You know that run he had earlier in the season as well, this season, where he played in the middle of the back three. Like, I just thought, that is the kind of footballer that I would want to be if I was a professional footballer. So yeah, he's one I wouldn't necessarily be my favourite ever player, but he's certainly one that I've had a bit of a soft spot for, a bit of a rogue one. But Ruben, yeah, for sure, man. I think Ruben has to be up there. Have you got any others you wanna mention from the comments?
Look, I was going to mention the John Stead one because I think at the time we had Stead, he scored a lot of important goals. To be honest, this was before we had the players like Wootton and Maka, and Stead was kind of in his own bracket of like consistent goal scorers across the season. And I just thought maybe his importance was very clear, but I just feel like maybe sometimes he just had he was a bit underappreciated because albeit the relegation season, no one was fantastic, and I think maybe with a few more goals from him, he probably would have stayed up. But you can say that about any striker. Like, his reputation and what he did for Notts doesn't get tarnished by his final season being a relegation one, in my opinion. I thought, from what I saw of him in the times he played for the club, whilst we were obviously supporters, I thought he was brilliant servant, and he's never once really disrespected the club since he's gone. So fair play to him.
Yeah, I also want to mention that I love the range of names thrown out. There's players that were playing before we were even born. So, what I love is the fact that we've had so many comments and obviously got viewers and listeners from a complete age range, which is, absolutely brilliant to see. Absolutely love that. So to those comments, obviously we can't probably comment. There's names like Tommy Johnson there, Tristan Benjamin. There's all sorts of different names been listed, Steve Cherry, and we probably can't comment massively on those players because, I mean, definitely before our time, some of them hung up their boots before, like I say, we were even born. But I just want to say thank you to them as well for commenting, because I think it's absolutely excellent that we've got a fan base which is so engaged with but also been through so many different eras, if you like. So I think that is brilliant. We'll move on to the game this Friday. Bit of a different one, Friday night kickoff. Always nice to play under the lights. How are you feeling going into this one? Does it feel like a must win? Because somehow we're still inside the playoffs, even though we picked up, I think it's 14 points from 14 games, someone said. We're still inside the playoffs. So how do you sum up this Friday?
Look, you said, do you think it's a must-win game? I actually said to a friend yesterday, who I'm at university with, it is must-win, in my opinion. I think you're coming towards the end of a difficult run. I feel like this time you need to start winning. I feel like it's the perfect opportunity to do so. With you playing Friday night, you get the win. You put pressure on everyone else to win around you the next day. But not only that, I feel the form. I saw someone say over the weekend, where he said something like, "Oh, we've quietly been in relegation form," and that's true. There's no beating around the bush. That is true. If we didn't have the start we had to the season, we would have been a lot worse off. That's a fact. That's probably why we stayed in the playoffs so long. But this for me is we've entered the time where you're going to start getting must-win games, and this is our first one. I think. I know Gillingham have sold quite well. I think they're nearly at 1,000 for ticket sales. So that's brilliant. But ultimately, the Friday night under the Knights of Medellin, we have to make sure we conclude that even with 3 points, because it's not even just a playoff picture you got to look at. You got to look at Maynard's picture as well. He needs that first win. I think when he gets that first win, everyone kind of just breathes a little bit. And then if you look further ahead, you've got Newport. After that, obviously, I know that's for a later discussion, but that's also a game that we really need to be within. Then you go on to Wrexham. Whatever happens there. You know, they're a very good team, but we're also a very good team. So there's no ruling us out that one. But we start on Friday night, and we start by saying it's an absolute must-win. Otherwise, I do think by Saturday 5:30 we will not be a playoff team.
Yeah, no, I have to agree with you. It's a great opportunity playing early to get those points on the board as well. Put ourselves in a decent position. We can't go any harder than 7th on Friday night, but we can certainly put a little bit of a gap between us and the teams that are chasing us. And I think that we're in a precarious position. What I will say is, I think the people that have been frustrated with our attacking play, because we've played a few more defensively sound teams. I don't want to call them defensive teams because they've got quality going forward. This Friday probably isn't the game that you're hoping for, because Gillingham are the fifth best defensive record in the league. So, in terms of being teams that are tough to break down, that is what they rely on. Because also, incredibly, they've scored the fewest goals in the league, Gillingham. They're the only team in the league that haven't scored 30 goals yet. They've only scored 26 in 29, averaging less than a goal a game, and yet they're 10th. They're only 1 point behind us. We've scored over double what they've scored, and they're only 1 point behind us. So that kind of tells you all you need to know about Gillingham. I think they've had so many 1-0 wins this season. It's unbelievable how many they've had. But if we can get the first goal, if we can score, there's no reason why we shouldn't get 3 points, because they're not the type of team that typically can outscore an opposition. They rely on having a good defensive structure. They've got a new manager themselves, Stephen Clements, who's trying to bring in more attacking play. But I think they're struggling a bit there. We'll have to say they've brought in a lot of strikers towards the deadline. They brought in Josh Walker, Josh Andrews, and also they brought in a Colombian striker on loan from Watford. So a little bit like us with Jata, they brought in a bit of an international forward. I'll throw it to you now. We usually have our score predictions. What's your score prediction, and how do you see the game itself going? We know it's important. How do you see the game itself coming out?
Obviously, there you said they're obviously very good defensively, and they obviously keep a lot of clean sheets. But I think now it's only Stockport that have scored more goals than as a City. I could be wrong, but I glanced at the league table last night. I think it's Stockport that's the team, and that's only one more goal as well. So I get obviously they're good defensively, but they should they will fear our attack just as much as we fear their ability to defend. So look, with that being the case, I do think Friday's the time we will win. I do think it will be the time where Maynard gets his first victory. I don't think we'll keep a clean sheet, although I would love to, because I feel like it would really like emphasise like just how important and how quick the defensive improvements have been. What I will say is though we need to be a lot quicker on the front foot. I feel like, especially against Mansfield, I just feel like we almost lack that drive. I feel like we were relying heavily on Jolie to be that driving force. I weren't particularly impressed with Crowley on Saturday. I think he was in very good form, and obviously I get like Williams leaving. It kind of like players take a bit longer to re-establish form under new managers. But I feel like as soon as we can get him under that form again, I feel like that's when everything will start clicking for us once again. I'm not saying he's in bad form. I just feel like we've seen a dip. But I do think he will score on Friday. And that's where I was going with that. I can see him being on the score sheet. I'll go. I think I'll go 3-1. But I know they're very good defensively, but I think our attack should be too much for their defence. I know obviously it's hard. It's very bold to say that because we played against two of the best defensive teams so far under Maynard, and we've only scored once. But ultimately, look, Meadow Lane, the crowd. When the crowd gets behind these players, they get inspired, and I feel we've seen that a lot this season. And I just feel like the players will know that this is a great opportunity to get a win, a great opportunity to get people back. No one's really lost faith in them. I get why people are starting to doubt it because we have been in really bad form, and there's no point being quiet about that. You know, there's no point beating around the bush. We've been in really bad form, and we are very lucky to be in the position we are still. So it's time to change that now, and I think a dominant 3-1 win on Friday night could really help that. And I'll throw the same question back to you, brother. What do you expect?
Yeah, I think you've raised a really good point there. Though we are very fortunate to be in that position. You know, I think it's quite unbelievable that we're still inside the playoffs. If I'm being honest, but surely the run's got to stop at some point because we're not a team that struggles in terms of having quality, especially going forwards. Like you say, Stockport, the only team that have scored more than us, it's only one goal. And I think that, you know, hopefully, touch wood, I'm not cursing us here, but a poor run's got to finish sometime. And there's no reason it shouldn't finish this Friday. And I think the fact that we've come through our bad period, still inside the playoffs, if we can then turn it around and go on a good run, then there's no reason why we shouldn't finish inside the top 7. I know I've picked Gillingham or even possibly play them down in terms of their goal scoring because they are the lowest scorers in the league. They have scored at least one in their last 6 games, though. However, they've only scored more than one in those 6 games once. So they've had in those 6 games they've scored once on 5 occasions, and I think they'll do that again. I think you're right. I don't think we'll keep a clean sheet. I think they will have enough to get a goal. I was debating between 3-1 and 2-1. I'll go for 2-1 to go a little bit different. I'll say that we'll win 2-1. I think it'll be a close game, but I think it'll be one where we're a little bit more comfortable than a 2-1 might suggest. You know, we might be 2-0 up and they get a goal sort of thing. I think we'll be a little bit more comfortable. Like you say, I think our attack will have too much for them. Don't get it wrong, they've brought in some really good players in January actually, but I just think that we should have, at home especially, we've got to make those home games count because our away form hasn't been good enough. So, before we wrap up, is there anything you want to say?
Well, I think it's going to be the same thing we've said all the time. So you just keep up the great support that we've had so far. I mean, we posted our figures and our stats for the first month, and I think any podcast, any newly formed podcast, would be very, very fortunate to have that start. So the fact that we have, obviously, we extend our gratitude for it because you don't just get handed that. You have to have a reason to, and obviously we're doing something right because we're getting a good core of people returning to watch us every week. So obviously we're very grateful for that. Obviously we're trying to sort out things for upcoming episodes. Obviously them things obviously take time. a lot of planning and a lot of effort, but we're trying. So yeah, just keep all the support, and we're very grateful.
Yeah, let's like to echo that. We're 6 subscribers away from 200, so we would absolutely love to hit that 200 mark for the next episode. That would be, absolutely incredible. And obviously, also check out the Twitter feed. That's where we post the episodes every week. You can find it on YouTube and Spotify, of course, where you're either listening or watching this at the moment. But if you want to keep up to date with stuff that we're posting, it's at Knots to Talk About. That's with the number 2 in there. At Knots to Talk About on Twitter. But yeah, I'll hand it over to you to sign us off. But thank you everyone for listening.
Well, thank you for giving me the honours of signing out. Look, guys, just keep the faith, keep behind them, and I'm sure there's absolutely no doubt we can't have a successful end to the season. So, thanks for watching. As always, you pies.